Pitmaster here. I'm here with the doc.
John, good to see
and
you.
then we're like Pitmaster and the doc. See, we've talked about this before, but I don't know about you if you know the dynamics. Pitmaster and the doc. So I'm in a superior position because I'm the pitmaster. He's the doc. I override him in a lot of ways. But if we went to doc and the nurse, it would reverse. So I think sometimes James gets bitter because we're pitmaster. Because we're pitmaster and the doc. He wants to change the name of everything. So we're the doc and the nurse. Because I'm a registered nurse. In case you guys didn't know that.
All right, here's the deal. If we do a podcast out of my office about medicine, that's what it's going to be called. But for now, we're in John's territory. I'm happy to... He's the expert. I'm just here for my... maybe once in a while interject some medicine. Keep him honest.
Honest? What am I, a liar? Anyway,
just
okay.
With your medical nonsense. But other than that...
So that's where we are. I mean, just like the dynamics of any relationship, there's ups and downs. Like with our wives, sometimes we're never in charge. I was thinking like our wife, sometimes we're in charge and sometimes they're subservient and then the other way around. But it seems like in both of our relationships, our wives are always in charge.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Does that make you sad?
No, not sad.
Just don't want to hear about it.
We're supposed to be having a good time.
Anyway, well, okay. So what we're going to talk about is mainly MMA. And we're going to start with Bellator 200, which I did watch. I'm actually just going to talk about two of the fights. I'm going to talk about the main event, which was... who was the main event?
I did not watch Bellator.
Yeah, the main event was Carvalho against hold on. Carvalho against Gegard Mustafi. Okay. Gegard Mustafi, he's freaking good. I mean, what's his record? I mean, he's 44-6. He's had 50 pro fights. And he's won almost all of them. I mean, that's a humongously impressive record. Because he's fought a lot of good guys, too. So, he KO'd. It was actually ground and pound. Rafael Carvalho, who was the champion at the time. Right? But he just beat the shit out of him. Basically. And Carvalho's no slouch. So Gegard Mousasi is like, and he's so calm. If you ever watch him, you've seen him fight, you gotta watch this guy, like his after fight interviews. He's just like, yeah, I won. Feels good. It feels really good. And he's just kind of like, yeah, well, how do you feel now? You're the champion. He goes, yeah, it feels really good. Makes me happy. I mean, he has like no emotion. And he's pretty much like that when he fights too. He just goes and gets them. He has beautiful kickboxing and beautiful takedowns. And he has unbelievable top control. So once he gets on top of you, just like Rafael found out, fight's over. And this is a top level guy. Rafael he's 15-1 when they went in there. He hadn't lost in like how many fights? He hasn't lost in like 10 fights. He beat Joe Schilling. He beat Manhoff. He beat I don't know. He beat a shit ton of guys. So big win for Gegard Mousasi. I mean, that guy's. I think Bellator is trying to up their game because they got some freaking good guys, including Gegard Mousasi. So that was a good fight. Then the semi-main, Michael Page, he fought some guy named David Rickles, the caveman. It looked like it was so one-sided. Michael Page is so good. He is like just unbelievable in his movement. He's like, it's how do you train for him? It's just he has such an unusual style, but then he knocks you out as soon as he touches you with either one of his hands. So he knocks out David Rickles, but then you look back, David Rickles has a decent record. He was like 19-5, and he's beaten some okay guys. So Michael Page is the real deal. I mean, he's definitely the real deal. I definitely think because this guy was no slouch, he's beaten some pretty good guys. He's 13-0. I think he's UFC knocking on UFC's door, unless, like I said, unless Bellator's up their game and they're going to keep some of these guys. So I don't know if they will or not, but Michael Page is somebody to watch. He's from England, and he just has unbelievable speed and power. So it's a great fight. So that was Bellator 22 pretty much. On a side note of that, Phil Davis fought, and he had a first round knockout over Linton Vassell with a head kick. The wrestler, Phil Davis. These guys, they're learning the skills. They're becoming so well rounded. Like you see, I mean, like with Dan Henderson, Olympic level wrestler, but he's known for his right hand, right? George St. Pierre, a Kyosho Shinkai karate black belt, known for his striking, head kick, knockouts, etc. Then he becomes the best wrestler in the whole UFC. So it just shows you Jacare. I mean, jiu-jitsu phenom knocking people out with head kicks. It just shows how MMA fighters are becoming so well-rounded, and they're becoming to morph. They're going from wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy, karate, striking guy, and they're just morphing into a MMA guy. They're just morphing into one MMA guy, and it's really good to watch. So that was about it for the Bellator. Let's go into the UFC now. UFC had a fight card this past weekend. What did you think about it?
I thought some of the fights were pretty good. It was in Liverpool, so it was on early in the morning.
Yeah,
on a Sunday. It was like at 10 a.m. in the morning. But there was a pretty good card. As usual, they had plenty of guys, hometown guys, fighting fighting in front of their crowd, including the main fight, which was a big deal. But I don't know. I enjoyed some of the fights. I thought it was a pretty good card. Did you watch them all?
To be honest, okay, if I can be honest here for a second, I thought the Bellator card was better all the way through and through. This main event was interesting. It didn't play out to its full potential, but it was interesting. It was an interesting matchup. And the semi-main, I don't even care who Neil Magny's fighting. I just love watching him fight. I mean, the guy's a fucking a U.S. veteran. He was in the Army for years. And his attitude and the way he fight anybody, any time, just throw anybody at him. I just love to. He contributed $15,000 of his fight purse, and he doesn't make that much. I mean, that's a big chunk of what he made. He donated it to a local family in his neighborhood in I think he lives in Colorado. That's having some severe medical problems. So he donated $15,000 of his purse.
He did, and he thanked his opponent for taking the fight so that he could make that donation.
Because his fight was off, yeah.
His fight was off. He was supposed to fight Gunnar Nelson, who messed up his knee in training or something. So I think it was a late replacement. Yeah, he was a late replacement, and he did okay for as long as he lasted. First time in the UFC, Craig White.
But Neil Magny, he's one of my favorite all time fighters, and because he's such a blue collar, down to earth guy, he'll just fight anybody. I love him. So he fought, and so that's the only reason I was interested in anything else.
I think though that is a point now in the UFC, as I know Dana White has been saying. If you're not willing to take fights, you may be out of the UFC. But like Neil Magny took this fight, and he said, at least in the post-fight interview, that he didn't even know who he was going to fight. They said, "Hey, can we change the fight, or will you fight someone else?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to be here. I'll fight no matter what, whoever you give me." So he did fight someone that he probably was guaranteed to win against, or as close as you can get it. But what did you think about that fight?
Well, to be honest, he fought Carlos Condit, Rafael dos Anjos, Johnny Hendricks, Hector Lombard, Kevin Gastelum. He's beaten most of these guys. Eric Silva, Damian Maia. So, he fought Damian Maia. That was and he lost. But, he'll fight anyone anytime. He beat Carlos Condit. But, yeah, he'll fight anyone. I think Gunnar Nelson would have been a more challenging match for him. Definitely. But this guy came up from nowhere. He'd never fought in the UFC before. He had a 14-7 record. But all those fights were outside of the UFC. So, this guy took a big chance, and kudos to him. Hopefully, he'll fight again in the UFC. But Neil Magny will fight anyone. Look at his record, and it's a who's who. Now going to the main.
Well, but back to that fight though. What did you think about the ending? So it was basically just a brutal knee to the face, and White had his face pretty low. He was against the cage, and I don't know, it looked like a really dangerous position to be in when you go back and watch what happened.
Yeah. That's going to be on my Sensei UFC, which, by the way, guys, every week I come up with I have a video called Sensei UFC, and it's techniques, tricks, tips, strategies that I see in an MMA fight. Doesn't have to always be UFC, but it usually is. And I bring them to you, showing you how you can change things or do that technique they did to instill, or you can implement it into your martial arts training. That is going to be one of them this week. Is head positioning is everything. And when you're up against the cage, whatever side you're on, if you're posturing somebody up against the cage, or they're posturing you up against the cage, you want head position. And you'll hear the corners always yelling for head positioning, because you want your head right up under their chin. And people are fighting for that position. Once you put your foot, your head down, unless it's up into somebody's body where you're trying to get a takedown, whether it be a single, a double, or a body lock, if you just put your head and leave it hanging in midair down here, somebody's going to swoop it up. And Neil did with his knee. It came right up. He had terrible head positioning, and he got caught with a beautiful knee, which knocked him out pretty much immediately. He did try to fight it off a little once he hit the ground, but he was done, and the fight was stopped. The fight was stopped as it should. So, yeah, head positioning was what happened in this fight.
That's not something you see very often, is it?
No. You don't see people putting their head there very often.
And you can see why. I think that's a mistake he made that he probably won't make again.
He'll never make that mistake. And there's so many. The problem with MMA, I'm not judging Craig White. Let me tell you that, because in MMA, unlike boxing or even kickboxing, there's so many ways to win, but that means there's so many ways to lose. You can lose in almost any position. You can be like kicking his butt and leave your arm out for a split second, and next thing you got an armbar. You can be kicking his butt and leave your head in one position. Like in boxing, it mean nothing. In MMA, all of a sudden you're choked out. So you have such a small margin of error in MMA that you can lose so many ways. So I am not, when I'm talking about like my Sensei UFC or any of these fights, I am not judging or criticizing any of these fighters. I'm just saying that's how he lost his fight, and he'll probably never do it again.
And it's an opportunity to learn for everybody, not just him.
Yeah.
So I found that part of the fight interesting. The other part that's interesting is, unlike boxing, like what you're saying, there's so many ways to lose or to win that you see these dramatic comebacks.
Yeah.
You see just these huge comebacks where someone's just getting a beat down for 3 rounds and then wins the fight.
Yeah.
Off of a submission or a knee or something that turns the fight around that you don't see in boxing.
Which one was it? This fight? There was one in this fight, I think.
Yeah, it was the hometown guy, Arnold Allen, fought Burnell.
That was this fight. Okay, so that was a good one. The guy was getting his ass whooped and he got a choke in the last round. Another one I was watching yesterday, it just came up on one of my channels. Scott Smith against Kung Lee. It was Kung Lee would beat the living shit out of him. I mean, jumping, spinning kicks, just beat him senseless. And then the third round, he faked a right hand, came back with left hook, and knocked Kung Lee out.
When is this fight?
That fight was 2009. It was Josh Thompson against El Nino. Was the semi-main, and the main, that was the main event. Kung Lee against Scott Smith. It was a great fight. A comeback in the third round with a knockout. The Thompson fight was unbelievable, and then there was also an old King Mo fight. He fought Whitehead and knocked him out. So it was a pretty cool card. It was at what was it, sport? It wasn't. It was I forget, World Series. No, I forgot what the promotion was, but it was packed. It was at the San Jose Convention Center or something, and it was packed. So it was a really good card. It was really interesting. So
did you see Allen's post-fight interview?
No.
The guy that had to come from behind choke. He had his dad in the corner. His dad is a big dude.
That was awkward.
That was pretty awkward. He mentioned his dad doing steroids.
That was weird.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, why would he do that?
It must be an inside joke or something with them. But he used his opportunity after his win for his post-fight interview to just poke at his dad, basically.
I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was but maybe,
his dad was big.
His dad was big, but so it wasn't really a joke that it wasn't real. I mean, it was Strike Force, but it was I just want to let you know, I want to thank my dad for being in my corner because my cornerman couldn't make it, so my dad worked my corner. I love having him in my corner, but he's been on steroids his whole life. I've never done steroids, but my dad has been injecting steroids his whole life. And it was where did that... Did he get hit too hard?
I don't know where that came from.
It wasn't even funny. It was if I was his dad, I'd be like, fuck you.
It was nice he had his dad in the corner, though.
Yeah, that was cool. So anyway, that Strike Force card I was talking about was in 2009. Strike Force Evolution. And Scott Smith beat Kung Lee. The El Nino, Gilbert Melendez, beat Josh Thompson to a decision, which was one of the best fights. These old-time fights, this fight was one of the best fights I've ever seen. It was a clear decision.
Did you go back and watch these?
They were on. It was on Showtime.
Oh, okay.
And then Josh Thompson just came at Gilbert, and Gilbert just beat him. But it was such a good fight. And then the Scott Smith, he came from behind. And then Ronaldo Jacare beat Matt Lindland with a choke. And then King Mo beat Mike Whitehead. But anyway, so that was a really good card. Blast from the past. But anyway, okay. Main event. We talk about the main event. It was...
So this was a Liverpool guy fighting in Liverpool. And that would have been a fun crowd to be in.
No.
The crowd went...
Or not.
The crowd went crazy.
It would not have been fun.
That had to be one of the all-time loudest crowds. He came out to... What did he come out to? Came out to some Neil Diamond song, and I was like, "What is the connection? Neil Diamond's not from there." And the song was "Sweet Caroline." He comes out to, and the whole crowd sang the song. That would have been a fun crowd to be at, but I was wondering what the connection was, and he said he just wanted to have a fun song and get the whole crowd singing. So that was his deal.
Oh, because that's a really popular karaoke song.
The whole crowd went nuts.
Caroline.
The crowd was crazy. Also, the crowd played a part, I think, in this fight because any little thing Darren Till did, the crowd went bonkers. Yeah. They were doing their old soccer chants and whatever they do over there. It looked like an entertaining crowd, but it made you feel like Wonderboy, like they booed him when he came out, and it was an interesting crowd dynamic and how that may have played into how the fight went.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know because if you watch the fight without the crowd, which I did not do. But I'm pretty good at being objective when I watch fights. I think I've been watching them long enough, since 1974. But objectively, I gave this fight to Stephen Thompson. Barely. But to be honest, if I was in Stephen Thompson's corner with a fight that close, I wouldn't have argued that. Now, if they gave it to Stephen Thompson and I was in Darren Till's corner, I wouldn't have complained. I think it could have easily been a draw, but I thought Stephen Thompson landed a little bit more punches, and that is what you're supposed to go on first and foremost. They kept talking about cage control because Darren Till did most of the aggression. Okay, but that's secondary to effective strikes landed. Do we have effective strikes landed?
Significant strikes.
Was that just one round? Is that the whole fight?
That was the whole fight. There was not a lot. It was the fight. These guys, the way they were matched, didn't make for a super exciting fight. It was like it was almost like a standoff. I felt like watching this fight.
But then why does it say 0 takedowns? Because there was a takedown.
It says all rounds selected.
Huh. Yeah, because there was one. Where's the takedown? There was a takedown, I think, in the 5th round. So they said no takedowns. It's a weird punch stat thing. So I'm not even going that because the judges didn't get to. But just from watching it, it was so close. I would have been super happy with a draw. I think even though the punch stats don't show it, I honestly think Stephen Thompson landed more clean shots. But with that said, Darren Till moved forward more, and he had the one and only knockdown.
And it was more of a knockdown.
It knocked down. It was a knockdown.
He didn't seem too phased from it.
He wasn't phased, but he wasn't pushed down. He was hit. It was. If that was a boxing match, that would have been a 10-8 round. If that was a boxing match, they would. If he stood straight back up, they would have given him an 8 count. That was a true knockdown because the punch landed. And it knocked him. He went down because of the punch.
Right, but I don't think he looked.
He wasn't hurt.
Like he was in danger from it.
No, but you don't have to be. So to count it.
But that was it. 5 rounds, 25 minutes. There was that.
There was one knockdown and one takedown. Even though the takedown's not being shown on.
I think he got up immediately.
You get up immediately. He was taken down though. He was taken down. But anyway, okay, so. It looked like a sparring match. Neither guy looked like they really, really wanted to win.
There was a lot of hugging, touching gloves.
Bantering,
yeah. There was a lot of, all very friendly.
Yeah.
And I think one of them even, I think Darren Till picked up Stephen Thompson after the fight. Yeah. Picked him up on his shoulders. So, and at the end of each round too, when they had they knew there's 10 seconds, it was like a 10-second standoff. At the end of most rounds. It was like... Even the end of the fight, neither one of them went for it at the end. They both kind of just squared off and looked at each other, and then it was over.
It was not an action-packed fight.
There was no fight of the night on this card. They didn't award
that one. Wouldn't have even been fight of the fight.
Right. So I think it was interesting to watch their styles. I like the way Wonderboy fights. I like his karate stuff he does, and he has these weird. Right hand, right head kick type things that he does over and over. You can watch in his highlight reel. He's just like a right hook, roundhouse or something, which seems very awkward to be able to do that he effectively does. But So I like watching him fight because I want to see his karate style and how he fights, and I like to watch that. So I enjoyed watching the fight, but it wasn't an exciting fight.
Yeah, because the fight was so much more like a sparring match than a fight. I didn't enjoy watching it. I respect both guys, and I respect that styles can sometimes nullify other styles, but they could have gone at it a lot better. They could have gone at it a lot harder. Both sides could have pushed it a lot more. Both sides could have tried to win better. I mean, both sides could have taken a chance a lot more, and they didn't. And I still think they're both really, really good fighters. Everybody has a night like that, and I think that was their night to be like that. And I don't think it takes anything away from them. But I think in this fight, and this fight alone, neither one of them really tried to win. Maybe they were both a little overtrained, and they just didn't have that extra push. Maybe their styles were nullifying each other's that much. But it didn't look like it. It looked like they could have swung a little more. I mean 31 and 41 strikes. I mean that's just 125 strikes.
Right.
Yeah, in 125 strikes in 5 rounds. So that's like, 30 a round.
Thrown, not landed, yeah.
That's like, yeah. So I mean, that's in 5 minutes. So I mean, you can do the math. I'm not really good at math. How many punches was that in a second? A minute.
What math were you doing? I missed it.
Anyway, it wasn't many.
It wasn't a lot.
It wasn't enough. And even landed is even less. 31 punches in 5 rounds. So that's like 6 punches a round. It wasn't enough action. They might have just been nullifying each other, but I don't think, it didn't look like either one of them really dug in deep and pushed for that win.
You know what it did? Though, watching Darren Till in the ring, he looked very comfortable in there. He did not look nervous at all.
Both of them, yeah.
Both of them. Well, Wonderboy's had how many fights?
Yeah.
He was a kickboxer and had a ridiculous number of fights. So he's been Darren Till's quite a bit younger. He's like 10 years younger.
Yeah.
Which is also weird. His name Wonderboy is much older than the guy who's fighting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I want to see Darren Till fight more after that. I'm hoping his next fight, whoever he fights, will complement his style better, because this didn't. Stephen Thompson was very defensive.
Yeah.
He ran away a lot. He got away from Darren Till. I think he did what he needed to do to not get hurt. But like you said, he didn't really push the fight either.
No, so it wasn't a good fight. I loved watching Darren Till, and I'm even more of a fan now because of that fight. Even though it wasn't a good fight, it was a good performance by both guys.
And man, the crowd loved to see him in there. They were behind him more than any fighter. I mean, as much as any fighter. Any crowd could be behind a fighter.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the English crowd seemed loud and very boisterous. But it seems like, I could be wrong, I'm not trying to be racist, but it seems like Irish crowds are like nasty. Like even when they come here, they're throwing shit through buses and they're fucking lighting fires. And when I think Connor came and fought once at the MGM.
I think a better word is rowdy. Rowdy.
As opposed to
nasty.
Well, when they're, okay, would you think they're rowdy or nasty if they burned your house? Because they set fire in the lobby of the...
They're like hooligans.
Yeah, I think it's nasty when they're setting fire to shit.
Yeah,
or throwing shit through buses. I mean, rowdy's like, go, yelling and screaming. But when they get physical, or when they get like really nasty, like burning shit, they set fire. You ever been to the UFC or the MGM when there's a UFC? They have a little octagon set up in the lobby of the UFC. They actually set fire to it. They started a fire there. And it's just, I don't know, they're just like, they seem like a nastier group. Like I said, I'm not trying to be racist.
I think you're generalizing, but yeah.
Oh, it could be.
And also, what we didn't talk about was the big deal, was whether or not this fight was even going to happen.
Because the weight, yeah.
So Darren Till was overweight by a few pounds.
3.5 pounds.
And so they had a stipulation that he couldn't weigh more than 188.
188, yeah.
Like right before the fight or at some point before the fight. So there was like a second weigh-in, which was much more than the weight class that he couldn't exceed,
I don't-
which he met, which was a weird, interesting.
I honestly don't think that was a true stipulation. I think that was something that was made to make the more dramatic and stuff. Because if you think about it logically, so they say Steven's side says, okay, if you're not 188, fights off. That's the day of the fight. That's when they're getting to the arena. So they get to the arena and then he's 189, so fights off. Really? They're not going. UFC is not going to tolerate that. They're not going to. They're not going to put they're not going to pull a fight right then and there. If they were going to pull it, they would have pulled it the day before the fight at the weigh-in. They're not going to pull it once they both arrive at the.
Have you ever seen that before? Like these stipulations, these extra stipulations.
I've seen it, but I've never seen them going to the day of.
Yeah,
that's why they can't have. Everybody says have day of weigh-ins. That's why they can't, because the promotion would fall apart. Because when people are starting to fall out, if they don't make weight that close to the fight, they just can't do that. It would not work. It's ideal if they just walked into the cage. There was the scale right there. So everybody's the weight that they are when they fight. But that would never work because everybody is trying to get an edge, and it's usually by cutting weight. So there'd be people that don't make the weight, right? So it would never work. So I don't know where that stipulation came from, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that it wasn't a true stipulation, because I don't think Dana's gonna say, all right, you show up at the arena, and if you don't weigh in this much, I'll just cancel the main event of the whole night. That's not gonna happen. We'll move
with the guy who is from the town that they're fighting in.
Who everybody came to see. This it never would have happened. It didn't happen. If they were gonna can that fight, they would have canned it the day before.
And they weren't going to because of who was fighting.
Yeah.
It would be hard to cancel that fight.
So it was kind of good that they did all those little extra, you got to do this and this, jump through this hoop and that hoop. But this fight, I think you knew for a fact the night before when they said it's still on, it was going to be on no matter what.
I agree. And so anyway, I thought the fight was interesting. A lot of fans probably didn't love that fight anyway.
No, it was a boring fight. It was a boring fight to watch for most people. To me, it was a very technical fight, but it wasn't a great fight. But neither guys pushed past their limit, so there was no. It was like sparring, high level sparring.
I'm gonna write this one off, but next time either one of them fights, I want to see it. But I hope it's a different scenario.
And it usually is with them, especially Till. Till's a knockout guy. He usually goes in for the knockout. But against Stephen Thompson, you can't. So, whatever. Anyway, so speaking of English guys, Michael the Count Bisping announced his retirement.
What do you think about that?
I am...
Why do you think he did it instead of like having another fight and then retiring after the fight? Why do you think he's retiring...
Something just must have hit him. Like it must have, something told him I don't want to fight anymore. Whatever it was. Maybe he started training for a fight, then he didn't feel like it, or, he's lost 2 in a row, 2 stoppages. That could have been part of it. I don't know, but, he's doing great with the commentary. He's commentating now, and he's doing a fantastic job. So I'm sure there's a future in it for him. I'm sure he's made a shit ton of money. I'm sure he has a really good life back home with his beautiful family. So I don't know. I don't know exactly why he did it that way, but I definitely I respect it. What is he? He's close to 40, probably, right?
Yeah, it's not like he's had a long time without being the champion either. He was champion and then he lost to GSP.
Yeah, he's not. He's just but he's always been right up there, and he's been. He's He has a really bad eye injury too. That might have played into it. I mean, pretty scary. Maybe like he gets hit a little too hard in one fight and he starts seeing like some weird vision or something and doesn't want to report it. But I mean, that could be a reason. I mean, he had a really bad eye injury with surgery and everything. I don't remember which fight it was, but that could have been it. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't, if I wouldn't take a chance on that. I mean, I don't know. I respect the shit out of him. I think he's a great fighter, great champion, great personality, great great leader of the sport, great commentator, and he seems like a great family man. So nothing but the best for him. And speaking of retirement, one of our close personal friends here at the pit, he doesn't train here, but he's a good friend. He's actually here right now. I'm gonna go see him. We're gonna go hang out tonight. Ian, Uncle Creepy McCall. He's announced his retirement too. He actually officially announced it on the Ariel Hawani show. But we talked a little bit about it today, and he is retired, and he has some health issues, and he's had a pretty long and good career. He's been to the top. He's been to the top of the UFC food chain. He didn't win a title, but he was right there, like number 1 and number 2. So he's. I mean, he can always, in his mind and bragging rights, I mean, he can say, "I made it to the top of the top. I've made it to the top of the UFC, which is the biggest, MMA organization in the world, and I made it to the top of that." So that would be like saying, a baseball player saying, "I made it to the top, team in the NFL or the NBA or what's baseball?
MLB.
MLB. I did not even know that. Is there like American League and National League?
Yeah, but it's major. They're both Major League Baseball.
Okay, so MLB, he's like in the top of the top, and that's what he has been. So much respect to him. Great fighter. Very interesting to watch. He's just nonstop. Great wrestling, great striking, great Muay Thai. So no more Uncle Creepy and no more Michael Bisping. They both retired. So we won't be seeing either of them.
What's the nickname? Do you know?
I wouldn't want to know. I really don't.
You just don't ask. Okay.
No. With if you guys know Ian McCall, you just don't, like, his nickname is Uncle Creepy. You just say, okay. You don't want to ask him that. You just don't want to know. Because if he tells you, that's something you can't unhear. And there's some things in life. There's a couple things in life that you don't want to ever hear. And if you do, you wish you could unhear them, but you can't. There's a couple things I've seen that I wish I could unsee too. But you can't. You just can't like rip your eyes out. So anyway, so that's all that's going on, guys. So ask us a question. We'll answer it. Check us out on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. And then I do Sensei UFC. So check that out on YouTube and Facebook. Then
you can check you out tonight.
Check me out tonight.
John's going to be a ref, right?
I'm going to be a ref. If you're anywhere, well, you're not going to see this in time, but there's frat night fights. And so what happens is Antonio Banuelos, who's an ex-UFC fighter, he runs one of the gyms. It's called the Pit and Slow. So the Pit Slow. It's in San Luis Obispo. It's one of our affiliate gyms because we're called the Pit. I'll go this way. And he does this really cool. It's a way to. It's a charity event for like. I think it's for like suicide victims or something. It's different every year, but the fraternities, he gets a bunch of fraternity brothers, and he matches them up, different fraternities, and then he trains them for a month at his gym, on his own dime, and then he puts together a fight at a local club in town. It's called The Graduate, and it's a dance club. They also serve lunch and dinner there. It's pretty good actually, The Graduate. And we have a ring set up, and it's like boxing. They put on 16-ounce gloves, and they just go for it.
So what
And
are they wearing? Any of the protective gear?
Just
Gloves.
It's just boxing.
But gloves and that's it.
Yeah, I think they might wear headgear too. I don't know, but it's just boxing, and they just go at it. And these guys, most of them never fought before. It's just their way to show their fraternal pride and just have a good time. It's always packed, and it's a lot of fun. And I ref, and Uncle Creepy Ian McCall is gonna ref some of the fights too. So we're gonna have a great time. We try to keep the guys safe, but let them put on a good show.
Yeah, it sounds like a good time.
You
So
should
they
come.
do it. They do it once a year.
You should come.
Yeah, maybe I will go.
Yeah. It's once a year. It's called Frat Fights. It's been going on a while.
So you see some? Do you see some talent there sometimes? Like, oh, this guy's never trained, but man, he's.
I've seen like guys that don't even want to fight, and they just kind of moving around each other, and I'll kind of shove them into each other because it's really irritating. But then lately, Antonio's been training them good because they've been going at it. It's like I'm having to separate them. They're banging each other. So I don't know about skill level because they haven't been at it long enough for that. But I've definitely seen a lot of heart. I've seen guys with bloody noses and shit, and they just want to keep fighting. So it's definitely interesting to watch. And
How many rounds they fight?
3
rounds.
3 like 2-minute rounds. Sometimes I let the rounds go a little bit longer. It depends how tired they are. Sometimes I shorten the rounds a little. It's a fun charity event. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I stop fights a little quicker than I should sometimes. But whatever. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I want everybody to have a good time, and I want it to be a success.
Well, you can tell us about it next week.
I will.
Yeah. That sounds like fun. That's a good way to spend the evening.
Yeah. So we'll be doing that. So that's what we got, guys. Check us out. Share us and tell people about the best podcast when anything to do with martial arts, fitness, or sports medicine. The best podcast in the world. Tell everybody about it. Thanks for coming.